The Hunt of 1,000 Leagues is a thundering new tale of Dariel R.A. Keogh's titanic sword and sorcery slayer, Orhan Timur, the Snow Leopard. One of 4 books in the New Edge Sword and Sorcery Novellas crowdfund running on BackerKit from September 9th through 30th. There you can get crowdfund exclusives like a 4x6 postcard of the cover art or pledge for a short story critique by Dariel himself. For now, why not get a preview by hearing me read the first chapter? The Hunt of 1,000 Leagues by Dariel R.A. Keogh. Chapter 1. Thunder rolled beneath the leaden, snow-weeping skies. The drumming came not from the heavy clouds, but from the steppe below. Hundreds of horsemen were sweeping the plain in a tightening crescent, herding a knot of fleeing, bloodied riders before them. Shouts of predatory triumph echoed from nearly 1,000 throats as the hunters closed for the kill. They raced each other to take the head of the lead fugitive before he could reach the river, their hunger for the promised bounty overcoming their reluctance to face the infamous scimitar dripping in the man's hand. The hunted cast desperate glances over their shoulders, then ahead. Soon they would have no choice but to brave the ice on the Ondo, and it was still too early in winter for the river to have frozen enough to bear horsemen safely. Time and again, some of the rearmost fugitives turned back to delay their pursuers. In moments, the cavalrymen left them as crimsoned rags on the snow. Arrows flew, and more of the fugitives tumbled off their mounts. A few shot back, but many of their pursuers wore mail or coats of scale, while they wore only their festival best. Every exchange saw some of them fall, while the mailed hunters forged on. Now there was only one fugitive left, his horse already wounded. Nobly it galloped on, never faltering, its rider now bending low over its neck, now slipping off to one side or another to dodge arrows. One warrior stood in his stirrups, drawing an arrow well behind his ear, as he waited for his target to get back in the saddle. The fugitive would have to manage the horse in either leaping off the steep bank onto the ice, or to double back for the open steppe. Eventually he did. The bowstring sang, and the man cried out, slumping over his horse's neck. Man and beast plunged off the bank together. The pursuers reached the bank only in time to see the screaming horse being dragged beneath the ice. Of the rider, there was no sign. A cry of triumph rose from the bloodthirsty throng. "Bear witness, all of you," the warrior cried. I, Al-Chidai, son of Boruldai, Khan of the Aigirud, have killed Orhan Timur." Frigid water closed over Orhan Timur's head. Struggle as he might, the Nabalan Kazakgand that had saved his life earlier when the knives of betrayal licked like silver flames was now dragging him inexorably to the bottom. He struck bottom on his back, the impact driving the arrow that had pierced the Kazakgand's steel mesh deeper, tearing a roar of pain from him, unwilling, costing him most of the air he'd remembered to inhale as he'd gone over the edge. Above, his horse was flailing in its death throes as the current dragged it beneath the ice. Instinctively, he threw up an arm to ward his head as its hooves came close. That galvanized him. He'd fallen in the shallows. The hole in the ice was not as far above him as he'd first thought. He kicked and twisted, righting himself, drew his dagger, and pushed against the bottom. Silt billowed like storm clouds over a dream plain. His hand broke water, and he was sinking again. No! Another leap, all the power in his legs behind it, and this time he drove the dagger onto the lip of the hole in the ice. The Ondo's powerful current clawed at his billowing clothes as a contrary wind tugs a ship's sails the wrong way. His vision began to dim. It was tempting to just let go, but heart and mind said no. Revenge! His barbarian soul howled for it, wild and powerful as the primeval steppe itself, and that nerved his limbs to keep moving. All the while he repeated 3 names over and over. Boruldai, Otchigin, Kaidu. One moment they'd been seated all together at a feast, having sealed an agreement to rebel against the usurper, his own blood brother, Shungar. An eye blink later, they were plunging knives into the other chieftains and their folk, many of them his old friends, comrades in the long years of war against Wulongo. Only the Khazad he'd worn beneath his festive coat had saved him. With a small band of fighters, he'd managed to cut his way free, only to find a full 2 man of Shungar's cavalry had broken into the rebel camp and was massacring them. There could be no rest until he had offered the chief's heads to those who died for him. At last, he got his head above water. He coughed, paused for a shuddering breath, then, with heroic effort, hauled himself onto the ice sheet, the shaft in his back sending shooting pains with every motion. With a curse, Orhan reached back, gritting his teeth, and after several tries, jerked the damned thing out. He crawled on his belly to shore, and finding a niche in the overhanging bank, he dragged himself inside. It reeked of otters. A family must have den there in the warmer months, fortunately leaving the place lined with straw. Orhan Timur's energy lasted only just long enough to heap the straw over his shivering body. Then, everything went dark. Orhan Timur looked up into smiling, honey-colored eyes as the heavens rang with the shouts, applause, and laughter of a gathered horde. The tall, athletic woman looming above him extended her hand, and he took it, allowing her to drag him back to his feet. Their locked gazes never broke apart, and her hand seemed as reluctant to let go as his. Orhan barely registered the jubilantly screaming throng. His whole world was contained in those eyes, and the sweetly curved lips beneath them. That's 2 for 2. Do you concede, Orhan Timur Khan? Even her voice was like honey. 1 more fall, Sohatai, he grinned back at her. For my honor, if not for victory. They drew off and began circling again. He feinted at her legs, went for her sleeve. She slapped his hand away with a laugh. He tried again. This time she seized his wrist and tugged. For all his wiry muscles, she nearly pulled him off his feet. He turned that momentum into a headbutt to her shoulder that sent her reeling, but when he seized her waist for the finishing throw, she countered with a powerful hold. They laughed as they strained against each other. The match was only play to them now, neither of them in a hurry to finish it, savoring the moment, cheek pressed to cheek, inhaling each other's breath and musk, lost in that fragile, private world. "Throw him, daughter! Throw him if you can!" roared the laughing Borildai. Sohatai swept her foot against his ankle, twisted him round, and dropped him on the icy earth. Her eyes never left his as he fell. Ah, Sohatai, if I do what I must do, I can never face you again. He closed his eyes, unwilling to leave the darkness where the moment was frozen in crystal forever. He awoke to another woman's voice ringing in his ears. "Orhan Timur, awake, my Khan, awake, or your sleep becomes eternal." Orhan struggled to open his eyes, but they would not, nor, it seemed, did he have the energy to even lift a finger, much less get up. He had thought he was cold, but now it seemed warm, warm as his own yurt with a fire in the hearth and thick furs over his naked body. Where was he? Dimly he thought he felt hard earth beneath him and a dull, throbbing pain in the small of his back, and wondered how that could be. Had he passed out drinking after the feast? No. He remembered now he was under the riverbank, soaked in icy water that had now frozen on his eyelashes and beard. He no longer felt cold, an ominous sign. "Awake, Orhan Timur! Open your eyes!" He made another effort of will and found himself looking into eyes as grey and cold as his own. A snow leopard was sitting on its haunches a mere foot away, a male of unusual size that he might have mistaken for a grey-furred tiger. It seemed to grin at him, showing yellowed fangs, several broken, and as his vision cleared, he saw the animal was old, very old. Beyond it, moonlight glinted ghostly on fresh snow and the ice of the Ondo. There was no human being in sight. That roused him to full wakefulness. Now he recalled whose voice he had heard, and knew he was in the presence of magic. "Kaliun, Shamaness, is that you? Why can't I see you?" "Because I am dead, my Khan," came a voice out of empty air. Jungar had me slain shortly after he deposed you. Do you seek revenge against Jungar as I do? Many years ago, Jungar had shot dead the shamaness's daughter while hunting in a forbidden sanctuary, mistaking her for a fox. Aye, and against the chiefs who betrayed me and massacred my allies, Borildai of the Aigurud, Ochagin of the Darukin, and the Torgonid, Kaidu! A Khan who cannot avenge wrongs to his folk is no Khan, Orhan whispered fiercely. Then I will give you a chance to live. A misty form took shape before him, resolving into a translucent phantom of a woman in feather robes, one hand idly stroking the snow leopard's head. This old one is Chagan Soyu, and he is willing to make a bargain with you. Overcome him in combat, giving him a good death, and his spirit's strength, as well as his flesh and pelt, are yours. Fail, and it is your spirit that will restore his youth. What say you, my Khan? Orhan laughed weakly. A fair contest. This cat looks slower than a lame bullock, and I can't even lift my dagger. Kalion's wispy face formed a cryptic smile. The contest is fair, for you will fight in spirit, not flesh, and in the spirit world, your forms will both be at full strength. Ha! I accept. Good. Come into the mists with me, Orhan Khan, said Kalion, opening her ghostly arms wide. At once Orhan felt himself lightened, floating naked as he had floated in cerulean lakes in summer as a boy. He looked down and saw he was indeed leaving his inert body behind, the snow leopard lying beside it. Then he was enveloped in thick, white fog. A feline growl sounded nearby, and instinctively he reached for a sword at his hip. There was none there, of course, but his scimitar, or a simulacrum of it, appeared in his hand. Good. You have, whatever you imagine in this realm, said the ghost of Kalion. Orhan nodded, and a suit of heavy lamellar armor formed over his body, a horsehair-plumed helm on his head, and a steel-round shield on his left arm. A belt appeared over his slim hips, rife with sheathed daggers, and Kalion smiled, a secret, pitying smile. Chagan Soyu came charging out of the billowing mists. Orhan met him with all the fiendish agility and skill he was famous for, but the snow leopard was faster and stronger. His shield was knocked spinning away, fading into the mists, and claws shredded his armor, laying open his breast. He snarled in fury and sought to bring the scimitar down upon the beast, but again it evaded him, and as he shot past it, it leapt onto his back. Hot, fetid breath washed over Orhan Timur's neck. Sharp fangs began to close on his spine. With a roar, he heaved the cat off, only for it to bounce back to its feet and launch itself at him again. They wrestled, the man's strength tested to the utter limits as the powerful predator sought to shake his grip off and clamp fangs again on the throat. Claws rent his armor to pieces like it was cloth. Struggle as he might, the steel blade and armor he had thought to rely on were useless. And then he understood. You were whatever you imagined in this world, as Kalion had said. Orhan Timur threw away the scimitar and screamed defiance at Chagan Soyu, a scream that began in a human throat but ended on a demonic note as the cat found himself confronted by another snow leopard in the full vigor of youth. Claws scythed, slavering jaws locked, were battered loose, locked again. One snow leopard got its foe's forepaw between its fangs, clamped down, and shook until bones snapped. The crippled cat went down, snarling, and its attacker fastened its fangs on the cripple's throat. When its victim had stopped convulsing, the victorious feline let go, shook itself, and stood up as a man. Orhan Timur wiped blood from his mouth and spat. His eyes went wide as Chagan Soyu's life energy surged into him. His spirit form grew. A new suit of fine armor, black lacquered steel plates edged with silver, and a tall helm with flying crest forming over it. New strength flooded into his limbs, and when he smiled, he knew he had fangs. Orhan felt himself falling, and opened his eyes to find he was back in his body. He stood up, reached behind him, and found the wound in his back had healed. Picking up his knife, he bent over the dead snow leopard, muttered reverent thanks to his spirit, then began skinning it. As he did so, he heard Callion's voice again, this time faintly as from afar. Her wispy form had begun to fade. "This was my last gift to you, Orhan Timur. I have held back from passing into the forgetfulness of true death for this moment. Now I must go. Let your rage cool for now. It will be your doom if you try to take on your foes again so soon. Their strength is waxing, yours is at its nadir. Evade them, keep them guessing. In time they will weaken their guard. Do you understand? For now, you must be content merely to survive. Leave the steppes behind. Live." Just before the shamaness disappeared entirely, though, he heard her chuckle. "Your soul smells so different now. It smells of snow leopard." Then she was gone. Orhan had looked to where he thought her voice was coming from, bowed, then sat staring off into space for long moments. At last he shook his head, muttering, "A Khan who cannot avenge a wrong to his people is not a Khan," and returned to skinning the snow leopard. Thanks for listening, and do keep an eye out for first chapter readings from the other 3 books in the crowdfunding.